Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here today to present the full moon of September 7th, 2025. And we're coming into eclipse season, so no shocker there. The problem with eclipse charts are that we tend to feel them even before they start, and we will definitely feel it after it has already passed. The other thing, now I do want to mention that though this eclipse chart for the second is, in my opinion, not that eventful. And what I mean by that is that there's not as much going on in the axis of for the asteroids, particularly of the sun moon, okay? However, the Aries point is a little bit more telling, and the DC chart is off the charts telling. So that means that those of us living on the East Coast will probably feel this particular eclipse through that local chart, as I like to refer to it. And it also means that Washington, D.C. in particular will feel it. So just to share a little bit of what's been going on with me, I am back in crutches. I'm looking now at an MRI. I don't think that I'm going to need surgery. We're all very hopeful that I will not, because they're going to try to strengthen my tendons through physical therapy. And since I was a therapist, this actually is something where I'm just going to go get educated, work on it myself, and then, check in with them. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see how the MRI looks. But new moon day, bam. I have a minor incident that again ruins my ankle and everything that I've achieved up till that point. So it was kind of devastating. So this full moon, I was actually at the doctor yesterday. So I'm on the 3rd, so it would be the 2nd. So we're still influenced by this full moon, even on the 2nd, is when I find out that the bones are fine. I have a healing broken bone from June, but it's healing, it's doing well. A lot of arthritis because I was a dancer, but apparently the tendons need a little bit of work. So it's always something. So I thought I'd pass that on to you, that I'm again a cripple and not walking all that well. But I'm trying to keep a stiff upper lip. I'm trying not to cry as much as I did last time, which was almost every day. This time I'm trying to be a little bit more upbeat, more in contact with medical, because I wasn't the first time. And I was right, when you break something like the 5th metatarsal, which I did, there isn't a whole lot they can do. And it wasn't wrong of me not to run out and get an x-ray and everything else. I did it later because I wanted to be able to walk down for it. But I can tell you that as a dancer, I sort of knew that was going to be the case. And just because Todd was in the room with me, I had the doctor verify that I was telling the truth. I was. So I do know some things about this kind of stuff. So in any event, just for all of you out there, if you feel like you've been set back since August 23rd, you probably have been. But I will tell you that the astrology on what I'm going through, and I know the astrology of whatever you are going through, is that this ultimately does work out for the better. And we have to believe that, even from my standpoint of crutches. Anyway, and I hate crutches, by the way, but I am doing better this time. So in any event, that's just a little example. I get hit now. I am so majorly hit by the Aries point that it is, for me, when I relay stories like that to you, it's to show you and anyone else who is that affected by the Aries point that we're all going through something on some level. And I think the world is, even if you are not directly being affected, if your partner is, if your child is, if your parent is, if your neighbor is, it's still going to affect you. So I wanted to point that out. So let's just start with this chart where on the very first things that I've written in my notes is that we are looking at an ascendant, descendant, that creates a grand cross with the full moon. That's huge, guys. That's huge, okay? Because it means that the sun moon in many ways has it equals the ascendant and the descendant of the United States chart. And I can tell you that that's going to mark changes are coming. Changes are very present. So we're looking at a 1522 sun and moon. Okay, so they're 1522 Virgo and Pisces. The ascendant of the chart and you can go out a degree and a half, you can actually go 2.5 degrees, okay? For the ascendant descendant of the United States, for 2:08:37 p.m., so 2:08 in the afternoon, 14 degrees 02 Sagittarius and Gemini. So we are talking a grand square. Enough to have a lot of, I think it's going to affect a lot of us, okay? I'm not walking, okay? I'm only 90 minutes from Washington, D.C. by car, okay? So that explains something, okay? So I'm struggling with my environment, and it's a struggle to even interact with other people when you cannot leave the house, okay? Or my sofa, although obviously I'm at my desk, so I'm doing okay that way. So in any event, please look out for that, guys. And I know that there's going to be a shakeup in DC, because here it is the September 3rd. I'm doing this, and right now the Epstein victims are getting ready to talk to Congress, and they're making headways because they're doing a lot of they're talking to commentary. They're literally doing news, okay, commentary. So, yeah, a lot of shakeup is coming our way. And I do believe, as I do for myself, that in the end, it will all lead to a better situation. It's just that we have to go through this. So, if you're around here, you too will have that connection of the ascendant and descendant being in effect with that. And again, it depends. Like, if the closer you are to DC, the more exact it's going to be. The further away you go, the further that square will go. But think of it this way. You could go all the way to 16 degrees of the ascendant, descendant, and you're still going to be in play, okay? So a lot of people are going to be affected. Okay, so some other things that I want to point out in this chart. And that is that Pluto is out of bounds. Now, this 20-year period that will be, this is like the last time Pluto will make these big out of bounds things. And it's ironic because I don't think it's a planet that, because of the size and where it is, I don't think it goes out of bounds all that much. And I could be wrong, and if I am, let me know. But it's to be out of bounds during eclipse season with this square going on in the chart. Major transformations are happening, and I believe, again, for the better, but it's going to be a real power play. And they do say, rumors are, that in DC there's huge power plays going on right now, because someone's health isn't good and someone else is vying for that position, and there are two different fronts running DC right now. You've got your 2025 group, and you've got your, which is, the religious idiots and all of that. And then you got your tech bros. Okay, so there's going to be, and there is, a real push-pull, and I think that that's going to really promote transformation. The other thing that's out of bounds, but I also want to point this out because it's really important because it's only about 6 minutes from the DC ascendant, is Astrea. Now, Astrea is coming in from the 12th, which is secrets, okay? And my feeling is it's telling us that there's going to be kind of an unloading of secrets that doesn't end. Like whatever's going on, whatever's begun is going to continue, continue, continue. But it's also telling us that we're going to see a lot because Astrea is also our eyes. So again, highlighting those, although it, again, at 13 degrees of Sagittarius, it's still in the sun-moon axis. So even if you don't live here, whatever is going on is ongoing. And it doesn't matter where you live, Pluto's out of bounds. So some of these factors for the out of bounds stuff, they're going to play out regardless of where you live. So I want to stress that. Okay, so we've got that at 13:56, literally 6 minutes from DC's ascendant. That's incredible. So we're going to see a lot. Okay, and we'll talk about Mercury later, but I definitely feel like that's a lot coming to our attention. And a lot of it will lead to transformations. And they're out of bounds, which means that they're out of their range. So think about that in terms of when something's out of its range. We really can't know what to expect from it. Okay, so here's some things that I want to go through on the cusps, as I always do. Okay, I'm going to go out a little bit. Okay, so let's start, well, I don't have to go out at all with any of this. We have an Astrea going on. And you say to yourself, well, that's ongoing, but what is it ongoing with? Well, we know the ascendant with the environment of DC, but also big money, Rockefeller. And one of the things that I hear people say, and I think, you know, there's a lot of justification to that, is how angry they are at some of the big money people with the Democrats. George Clooney comes to mind, and somebody even said, you know, if they ever saw him on the street, they'd probably pop him. Okay, because they have set us up for this. And that goes for the traditional Democrats. That's why the Democratic Party doesn't seem to be doing very well. Right now, I think the independents will take over. Unless the Democratic Party wakes up and puts in that second tier, which is much better than what they have now, I can't see the Democratic Party gaining more power at this point. I could be wrong because, again, Pluto, we really can't see what's going on. But I can tell you big money is an issue, and it will be an ongoing issue as we move forward in this eclipse. One of the things we have to learn as a country is that we can't count on money, and that we cannot worship money, which is what we have been doing from the beginning. It's all about oh, he has money, he can take care of it. You know, no, he can't. He's probably a crook. Okay? And we got to start recognizing that the people who have money are not going to stand up for people like you and me. They're not. It doesn't behoove them. They're not going to make any money from that. So I think, you know, that's something we need to look at. Interestingly enough, and I put this one in there because of the Astrea Rockefeller, is the 17 degrees 51 cusp that we see here at the second house. Right here is an asteroid at 1631 Capricorn. Yeah, you're right. It's out by about 20 minutes exactly, where I shouldn't be looking at it, but I got to tell you a little secret. That has us questioning ethics, morals, and money. How much are we worth? How much are people worth? Okay, that's huge, huge. And don't you know, Pluto, the out of bounds Pluto, which is also retrograde, looking at things from the past, how did we get here, power, you know, power manipulations and power plays, you know, we're really looking at that. And Urania at 318 is a pretty far out aspect, but Urania is logical thinking. So maybe some people are beginning to put on their thinking caps and going, wait a minute. And this is, in many ways, questioning ethics, morals, value systems. and financial value, worth. We're questioning that. Okay, we're questioning it from the first house to the second house. So that's kind of interesting because it's sort of like standing outside of it, but looking at it. Maybe that's what we need to do, is be objective. Urania is objective. It's very logical. Then we move, there's not a lot, again, but we do have down here, just inside of the fourth house, okay, the roots, the IC, we have Hopi. Okay, so Hopi is retrograde, and I, for one, yay, I'm happy to see that, because Hopi is territorial. It's also when people tend to be prejudiced, and it's boundaries, okay? But it's also surgery, and the fact that it was going backwards is yay for me, because it is kind of moving off of some important stuff in my chart by going retrograde, that I'm, again, not going to, hopefully, not doing surgery, and I don't think I am. So that was good news for me. At 2:23 and 3:41, again, we're talking about 20 minutes out. Okay, so it's 20 minutes off of its axis. But I think it's really important, because one of the things that I feel is happening is that people are using their biases, their prejudices, if you will, in order to set their boundaries, okay? And that's something to look out for, especially if you're in a minority. And by the way, even though I'm white, I'm still a female, and I'm an older female at that. So, you know, all of those factors come into play when you're talking about being put into categories, Hopi. When you move on to the border of the fifth house, okay, which is our house of expressions, okay, who we want to express, there's an abundance here. There is an abundance. Now, I did not look at, and I could, at Amitas, but I want to say that I think there's abundance of resistance. Now, we could look at that politically, but I just talked to my daughter about something that's related to her job, and I'm seeing it. So even though Adamitas is not there, it is in an aspect to, or I should say Adamite, it's Adamite. It's still an aspect to that abundantia. So, interesting stuff. Then we just move on, okay? There is a part of spirit that goes from, well, sitting right on the descendant, which is, I think, again, being with people that you love, that you trust, who are like-minded. Here we go with categorizing, but again, I think that's really important right now, is something we need to look at. Oh, and I forgot, let's go back to the nadir, because I did want to talk about this. I probably wrote it down and skipped right over it. Neptune is at 111. And we have a 223 cusp. So it's clearly in the third house, and but it's really close to that cusp, making it have some more importance. And this can be things like illness, especially illness in the family or somebody close to you, with Neptune right there at 111. And it is retrograde, so it's heading backwards. But a couple of other things to look out for. Deception because of biases, being deceived, being overly Pollyanna can work the same way, because then you're just deceiving yourself. So all of this on DC is down at the IC. So it could also be deceptions. Okay? And by the way, when you're doing Uranian, or when you're working with asteroids, we combined all those angles, and so Neptune would then be also affecting both the ascendant and the descendant, as well as the midheaven. Okay, which it could also be illness, like I said, illness, compassion, but sometimes misplaced compassion. It is deception, even self-deception, and it's so there's a lot going on there. Okay. And again, remember, we have somebody who's sick in the White House. So as we move on, and I got to get back to where I was, there isn't a lot, a lot of this is like what I want to call personal. Okay. When I get up here, the very first thing that I have that deals with the world at large is a 2628 cusp with a 2648, so it's in there, Shiva, which, and by the way, this is cusping the house of change. It's also the house of, now if we go down, and I talked about Neptune is actually in the house of I think. That's why we're, the deception and all of that is really important, because it comes into I think. It's the communication house. Whereas she was telling us that this is occurring in the house of change, in the house of higher thoughts, in the house of more learned facts, if you will. And it's a destruction. It's destroying in order to rebuild. Okay? So, there's a destructive, raging quality about Shiva and what it's tearing down. Ironically, right on the cusp, right inside the cusp of change. Change is coming, people. Change is coming. And that's really important. As I move through the rest of the chart, there really isn't anything that oh, wait. There was one more. Yeah, I forgot. Thank you. It was, okay. I was going to talk about this when I get to the dial. Let's talk about it now because it's also on the cusp of this chart. It is going from the 11th house, the house of associations, people we're associated with, and it's going into the 12th house of secrets. Now, it's literally 51, so we're only talking about 6 minutes off, but it's in the house of associations. It's Juno, okay? And Juno is running with Alicia, okay, which I was going to be talking about anyway. And let me tell you, that is, Alicia is self-destructive qualities. And it's a partner who might be self-destructive. But it might be a partner who's self-destructive because of who and what they are associating with. Okay, so it's something for us to look out for. It's also an awareness of how sometimes by dealing that these partners could be self-destructive. I think, and this could be someone we're just associated with, but maybe we work with them. Maybe it's a work partner. But I get the feeling that there's a strong awareness because we're talking about 2304 to 2351, and the cusp itself is 57. Which means they're all there and they're all on that cusp. And it makes me think that you might see this destructive, this self-destructive behavior, these actions, but then you're saying to yourself, I don't know if this is all that's going on. I think more is going on than I can see. And you would be right. So I wanted to get through that. Now, I've been doing a lot of work on midpoints, so I'm just going to give you and I do this. So we're going to go to the dial here. Oh, you can tell I've been working. And we're going to look at first the Aries point, okay? And the Aries point has in it a lot more asteroid-wise than the Sun axis, okay? First of all, I want to point out that the Saturn is like a half of a minute away from the degree point of the Aries point. Okay, so we're talking about an Aries Saturn. So right away know that Saturn, which is your restrictions, which is, the need to grow up and be mature, to take responsibility, to do the work we need to do, to learn the lessons. Saturn is our taskmaster. And so we have to, with that said, understand that everybody is feeling this influence of Saturn, where we have to take responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility for my foot. I'm not going to cry about it every day. I'm going to do what I need to do to make myself better. And it means staying in a house and staying away from other people and doing all that other stuff that is really terrible. Okay, although I literally have friends coming for the weekend because I can't go out with crutches. Okay, getting through the backyard is a nightmare just to get to the car. So I think that, for a lot of people, not just me, but for a lot of us, this is something that you're feeling. Okay, for one reason or another. Doesn't have to be because you're hurting physically. Doesn't even have to be because you're sick, although I suspect a lot are. Just because of that Neptune. So as I look up, I just wanted to get into some of this. Okay, so we did talk about the Aries Saturn. This is food. Okay, so if you're, okay, so if you are, and Sirius is running, it's just amazing. Sirius is also right there. So if you're, and also it's worse than what you think, or it's better than what you think, watch it, because I'm somebody who's like sitting around now, and sure, I can keep up with a couple postures of yoga, but that's all I can do. I can't even get around, although I'm getting some good exercise going up and down steps on my butt. You got to know that I can't eat that much or I'll gain weight like crazy. Okay. Also, the Zeus at Amitos is also telling us that we're blocked in our production. Well, as a person whose moon sits down here, I can tell you that is literal for me. So look out for it. I can't help but keep using myself for an example, because these planets are so playing out in my chart, okay, that I know I'm not alone. Okay, so some of the things that we have here in the Aries point is also this Mars-Mercury, okay, which is to say that it's like you think something, you do it, okay, or your impulsive action will then cause you to be in this place where you have to think something through, but you do get this, could also be activities that are done with young people, okay. So there's a couple of things that can relate to. The other thing is Aries also equals, and that's when I get to the next Aries. So I'm just going to come down this side. Sometimes I come down the other side. But here we are at 2230, and yeah, that isn't where I saw it. Okay, that's actually good. Okay, is where, yeah, this is where the Mars Zeus, you want to be productive, even even if you're limited. And one of the things that really is highlighted here is bosses, okay, or the people in charge. Remember that there's a lot of, and with Venus Saturn, you're going to be a little bit more frugal about money. You're going to be also more aware of who you're associating with, and maybe keeping more to yourself, because the environment with ascendant Uranus is very unpredictable. Okay, it's particularly unpredictable if you're dealing with this DC chart, but it's really unpredictable. Okay. The Poseidon Saturn is also that I believe we're not being given all the information that we need to make good decisions. So and also you could be separating from people because of their belief systems or their ethics and morals. Remember, we're questioning that in the DC chart. Okay, so I did hit everything on that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with this Aries point, and before I get to the sun moon, and I'm going to go into what I see there. And the first thing I want to talk about is we're all looking for a hero. Boy, are we looking for a hero. Okay, I live in a house with no caretaker, so I'll just take somebody who would do things for me. But, it's a hero, and it's Prometheus. And realize this, that Prometheus loved mankind so much that he gave us fire. And what we're going to be hoping for is somebody who loves this country so much, I'm going to use that as, or the place of business so much, or whatever, that they're willing to be a whistleblower, they're willing to champion for the people. And it relates to money. So if you're thinking about workers and work environments, you might be thinking about how much pay. people are getting versus what they need. I come down and it talks about messages. Okay, messages are extremely important this month. But you're supposed to look at the structure of messages. If you're giving a message, be structured. Something I try to do with astrology. Be structured about what you're doing. Here's an interesting lineup. I actually did some research on this. House, Venus, Ganymede. And you know, a couple of things come to mind here. Ganymede, first of all, is enabling. It's being in service of. It could be somebody who, if you have a cleaning person, they would be the person who helps clean or work your house. But Venus might be talking about your friendship with that person, or it could be talking about money that's being paid to that person. Remember, we're talking a lot about that. And you're getting the impression with House Venus, on a health-wise, you know, I was kind of looking, that's what I was really looking at. House is anything that houses, and Venus could be blood, so the housing of blood, which would be the heart, actually. But I want to think more about who's enabling even maybe money in a house. Who's enabling maybe the spending of money, or a social activity in a specific building, and then working for that. The Odysseus Hypatia, let's look at that. Now, Odysseus is out by 1 minute, so it's technically not supposed to be here, but only by 1 minute, so I thought, oh, I got to look at it. The reason why is because it's foreigners. It's with all the stuff going on against immigrants and immigration, it is cause for concern. Hypatia is a health worker, okay? And it could be health workers or health situations that work with foreigners. Now, what's so bad about that is what's going on in this country. Now, and again, that's only the DC chart. This is everybody. So I'm under the impression that immigration is suffering everywhere. And that the way of attacking it is to go through health. I know they're doing it here. Then we move down to Lee, Polydorus, and Myers. Lee can have to do with the internet. It could be like looking up health factors on the internet. But I'm going to go you one better. I did put notes down for this. It's also a playground. What is it saying about playgrounds? And playgrounds are different for different people. I mean, if you're a gambler, the horse races are a playground. If you understand, it's a playground is a place where we could be a bar, you know, where we might relax, where we might. So I'm going to open up that one. It can also be something that's on the internet, so it could be, you know, something that's online. But with Polaris, you got to consider health. You got to consider the health. So it could be a health issue on a playground. Myers is telling you to use your intuition because you have it with Myers. So there's an ability to intuit things. I've been doing a lot of work on my foot, and I have gotten a lot of stuff, particularly after speaking with the doctor and then myself, and then, you know, finding out Hopi's going backwards and all of that. You know, intuitively, I just knew I wouldn't need a surgery. The doctor knew. He just looked at the condition of my bones in the x-rays and knew that I was healthy, that I am somebody who is physically active and in good condition, for my age particularly, so that's a biggie. I think at any other person who had gone through what I've gone through might not have fared as well. The next one we're going to look at is Fisher and Melpomene, because that's telling us that lies are getting worse, or they're making things worse. Melpomene is a worsening of the condition, and Fisher is the lies. Okay, now if you think about, let's go back to the person who's working in your house, okay, they may not be telling you the truth. Remember, I don't know that everything is known, right? Remember, we're asking questions about value and worth. Okay, so wow, you know, you can't make this stuff up. This all goes together. I try to keep it really simple, so I separate everything and only tell you as conjunctions, but realize when I say this to you that Fisher and Melpomene also go along with coin. They also go along with messenger, Iyengar. They also go along with that Saturn. So realize that everything I'm talking about kind of goes together and formulates these stories that we're living out, we're making in real time. So then we go on to Mezzani, Bacchus, and Bano. Okay, Bano is, oh, and Hecate. I love Hecate. Hecate is probably one of my most favorite asteroids. She is the goddess of birth and death, okay? But she is also intuition. She is, she's important to us, okay? So again, we're being told to look at our intuition about our partners, Bano. That particularly is marriage partners and significant others. That there could be a drug that they're taking that is affecting their memory. Or abuse of medications or alcohol that is affecting one's memory. Okay. And Hecate is there and Bano. So again, when it comes to partners, your intuition's on. It's time to listen. Born, check, and lust. And by the way, partners, and especially close other people, could be like best friends as well. So it doesn't have to just be significant others, especially since Juno is a big factor here. Born is considered another ascendant, your environment. So there's a lot of excitement in the environment, lust, because maybe something's being checked on. So we're checking our environments for excitement. Some people might be needing excitement and checking around their environment. But think of that as your environment, check the environment, lust, which is excitement, or what turns us on. Okay, what turns us on doesn't always have to be the lust factor, even though it's called lust. Varda tells us that there's a truth out there that will set us free. Remember Fisher and Melpomene? Well, generally, and this doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot, there is a Varda. Now, I take that back. Varda is running with Delphi. Okay, and remember all the intuition stuff. So Delphi is the truth that sets you free, but its buddy at this point is Delphi. Delphi is what's in the Aries point, okay? Delphi is your oracles, people who read tarot cards, astrologers. Delphi is the oracle, okay? And I'm feeling a lot like it might be some of the stuff we're hearing. I listen to those people too. I mean, I do the work, but I also listen to those people. And I read cards. I do all of that stuff. And I can tell you that right now, it's a great time to work with that stuff because it's going to help your intuition develop even stronger. And let's be honest, in the new world as we're ascending right now, I think intuition's a bigger factor. I think that people will understand their intuition more and will be utilizing their intuition more. So it's a wonderful thing. Artemis is interesting. It's retrograde. I think of it as it's animals, it's wildlife, but it's also dead animals, okay? I'll be honest with you. I was just affected. This Artemis, let's talk about it because it'll help you understand. Remember that I'm really affected by the Aries point. And today I read an article about the loss, the death of the last male rhino, the white rhinos, okay? And they're officially extinct now because all that's left is 2 females. And God, that broke my heart, okay? That I'm very affected by, in my own chart, by animals and wildlife. And it's no wonder I have a lot of animals that I live with because, you know, I love animals. I mean, I even love the wild ones in the backyard. And I protect them as much as I protect my in-the-house animals. And I feel like that just Oh, that just devastated me. So look for that. You know, it's the death of things. Now, I don't know how it'll affect other people, and I don't know what else that might materialize as, but that's definitely a factor. So that's it for the Aries point. Let's move on to the Sun, Moon configuration, which is right here. Okay, let me come back to where it really is. Right there. Okay, so, and you can see Sun, Moon opposition. Okay, it comes with a Uranus-Saturn, which is a sudden separation. Are we suddenly separating from our partners, from our relationships, from our friends, from our group activities? You know, well, I am, but not because I want to. So, you know, things like that. This is where I saw. The other thing is Hades Venus, you know, which could be sexually transmitted diseases, can also be, because you think about Hades as deterioration. So this could also be blood diseases. This could also be deterioration of relationships, which we've been talking about a lot. Okay, but it's not, you know, here's the thing. We think it's terrible, awful, and horrible when we're going through these things, but sometimes we need to unload these partners so we can move on and evolve in terms of who we are. Because we don't always understand that relationships are like drugs, and sometimes we get addicted. And this is any kind of relationship. And we feel like we really need that, but we really don't. And the absence of it can be good. I think that there's going to be success. We're going to be productive with the Zeus and the Apollon, with our goals, how we set ourselves up. So, you know, with that Zeus being the seed, it's also guns and explosions. It's also about the fact that there's a lot of guns, or the gun business in general, okay, which, in all honesty, is far too powerful in this particular country, the gun lobbies and the gun stuff. So, and how much of that is affecting the Hades Juno? Because people who are not in favor of that, it would deteriorate that relationship. So, now I'm going to go through, that's the one axis, okay? And the second axis is, let me write it down here, 752. So I'm going to bring it over to here. Right. Cupido. Cupido is outside of this, but not by much. Okay. I mean, like minutes. So Cupido is in there, and that does emphasize families. Okay. Now notice that it also equals Alicia. Okay. So you got to think about self-destructive concepts with regards to our organizations, our families, and that's where the Hades Chronos, and poverty. How affected are we by poverty? I hope we're really affected, because we can't solve the problem if we don't feel something about it. And the Pluto ascendant, which is, again, talking about transformations, but it's also talking about power struggles, okay? And the reason why I say that is the ascendant node, okay? So, and watch out for food that will make you sick, or food that you eat because you're sick. Also, business announcements. Lots of announcements. There's going to be a lot of news, okay? I don't care where you live in the world. There's going to be a lot of news. I'm not sure you're going to be happy with some of it, with the Aries Hades and the Pluto ascendant. I don't think that we're going to be all that excited, but realize that it's all part of self-destruction. Like sometimes I hear things coming out politically, and I know that's just another coffin another nail in the coffin for the burying of what's happening. So, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like, wait for it. So that brings us through that series. Now, I'm going to move on, and I want to talk about a couple of things that do show up here in the axis. First of all, Rockefeller. So if you think America's the only person or the only country that has a problem with big money, wrong answer. If you think that you're not affected because you're not involved in politics, wrong answer. Big money people are affecting everything. And there is a lot of self-destruction that could be occurring as a result of the connections to big money. Okay, so that's what I mean, another nail in the coffin. So sometimes, like, nothing is all good or all bad. Bad stuff brings about good. Good stuff opens up the Pandora box for bad. Okay, so it's both. It's always both. That's astrology for you. Okay, so here we have our new axis, okay? So we have this new cross going on. And again, I'm not going to tell, there's not a lot of asteroids, okay? There's enough, but not as many as you might think. Okay, so we start with mentor. This is the time to find mentors, okay? And to look for mentors. But one of the things you have to be careful of is narcissistic people who tempt you. Being tempted by narcissists. Okay, watch that. It is the time to look for a mentor, but you got to be careful. Dalius tells us, and it's with the sun, that there are very clever people that are very good at designing and manipulating. And that is going to be surprising. And there will be days when we will be surprised, Pandora. Okay? Cortusa is again an environment. Look what's going on around you. Look who you're having, these conversations with. What's going on. Somebody is cleverly maneuvering things. Look around. You're going to also see lacks. There's going to be a lack of. Rosetta is truth. And Jacobson is, again, going back to your intuition. But let me double check that. Well, I've done it again. It's actually the con man. Okay, remember that we got the con going on. And remember the whole thing here with the designing person and all of that. Lacks Rosetta's truth, the con man. The con man lacks the truth. The con man is something we need to look out for. Amor, Alicia, and Juno is telling you that you may really love some people. You may love these persons. But you got to start putting up boundaries because they are self-destructive and they are, again, referring to our partnerships. Okay, be careful who you're partners with. I talked about Rockefeller and Chihuahua, which is, the big money and the destruction. And I think destruction caused by big money, okay? Next is Credo. Again, look for what's credible because there are lies all over these axes, okay? There are lies. And Berlin is actually cutting off. And so here we go again with, that destructive, raging energy, cutting it off. So we are really, I think September is just going to be a very exciting month, not just eclipse-wise, but I think it is the reckoning is coming. And this is just a full moon. I mean, this is just a reflectory. Wait till the new moon. That's going to be really exciting. Okay, so that new moon is an eclipse, and I think it's going to be really rather exciting. So, with that said, I would like to point out that this is a full eclipse. Okay, so this is not a partial on September 7th. So, despite the fact that it may not seem like it had a lot, it is a very, very interesting and strong chart. And so with that, I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to say thank you for watching the video and supporting my very small channel. I really appreciate all of you and love hearing from you, so please comment. And also share and like if you'd like. And until we meet again, as always, I wish you only happy reading.